Welcome to Michael's Record Collection. I'm very happy to have with me on the show this time out Pat Francis from the Rock Solid podcast. Pat, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. Now, do I call you Michael or Mike?
You call me Michael. That's what I go by. But, Twitter being Twitter, they won't let me use all the characters. So it's Mike's Records on Twitter.
Well, I'll call you Michael because that's what you want.
Yeah. So you've been doing Rock Solid a long time. And I found your show because one of my other gigs is I run a soccer website, and I follow Alexi Lawless on Twitter. And Alexi tweeted about being on your show. So I went and checked it out. You guys were having a little discussion about Def Leppard. You guys were talking about Def Leppard and On Through the Night. And Alexi didn't like the song Wasted, and you did. And Alexi browbeat you into saying that, okay, it's not that good.
He beat me down. And he intimidated me. He beat me down. And yeah, I changed my opinion. It's not one of my prouder moments, but that's what happened.
I called him out for it. I met Alexi in person for the first time at a reception before the MLS All-Star game. And I just talked to him for probably 15, 20 minutes just about that song. And about how I told him no, I didn't convince him that it was good, but I did convince him that he shouldn't have made you feel bad for liking it.
Well, Alexi's great. I love that guy. So he could probably browbeat me into not liking something else. So
yeah. So you've been doing this show, what, 11 years now?
We're in the 11th year.
Wow. How did you come up with the idea that this is something you wanted to do?
I didn't even come up with the idea. I was a couple guys from another podcast that I used to be on a lot. They just set me down and they said they were going to start like a podcast network. And they said, we want you to be the first show on our network. And I said, well, I can't do a podcast. I don't know what to do a podcast about. And they said, you love music. You do a music podcast. And I was like, okay, well, I can't do it by myself. I need a co-host. So we just talked about it for a couple minutes. A couple names were thrown out there. Mike Schmidt's name was thrown out there. Mike Siegel's name was thrown out there. And then I remember this guy on Facebook and Twitter all the time, Gary Lucy, who we all knew a little bit. And he had, different musical taste than I did. Mm-hmm. And he's funny. So I said, well, let's go with Gary Lucy because no one wants to hear two guys talking about the same music every week. I just felt that might be boring. I thought it might be fun for people that have different opinions on like different things. So I asked him if he wanted to do it. He said yes. And the first episode ever, that was it. We just turned the mics on and went. We didn't plan anything out other than the topic. Mm-hmm. We didn't do a test show. We didn't really even talk about it. We just showed up, turned the mics on, and that's it. And you can still find that first episode everywhere. And that was it.
So the premise of your show, and it's changed a little bit over the course of the pandemic at times, but your show is about music, but it's a comedy music about all things rock and roll, or all things music. What is your tagline?
We say it's the comedy podcast for all things music, both new and classic. The comedy just comes out of whoever's in the room with me and whatever the conversation is. We don't try to force comedy. And sometimes there isn't comedy in it. But for the most part, we try to be funny. With the pandemic, it was more the interview of the week. And I don't really try to be funny when I have some famous musical guest. I mean, right. I don't try to not be. If something's funny, I'll say it. Yeah. But yeah, I always wanted to show that it would sound like you and a friend sitting around in your room in high school listening to music. Yeah. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. That's a great premise. That's kind of what my thought was too. It's that you used to come home from school, your friends would come over, you'd put records on and you'd bust on each other and you'd talk a little bit and you'd say, oh man, that was a great guitar solo. Can you believe that? Listen to Ace Frehley, look what he's doing and that right. kind of thing. And it was fun. I was trying to recapture that. And I think you guys do a good job of that. And were these all like comedian friends of yours that when you started out?
Well, yeah. Once, Gary was around for about 130 episodes, and then once he didn't want to do it anymore, I wanted to have a rotating. So I wanted to have some female voices. So I got Christy Stratton, April Richardson, Murray Valeriano, and Mike Siegel, and those guys became. I call that the classic lineup. They became the rotators, and I was able to keep that up for quite a few years with really rotating them in girl boy every week, and it was quite a task to schedule everyone because everyone's very busy, and then Christy and I have kids, and but and then eventually April Richardson moved away, and so then I just had to find other people, still recording with Mike and Christy and Murray, but bringing other people into the fold, and and then my nephew was on for many years, Kyle, as the producer more of a sidekick or co-host, but we miss Kyle. Hopefully someday he'll move back to LA and I'll make him do this again. But so now I just feel like it's really loose and free, and I can have anyone come co-host, and it's just it's something that I'm not tired of. I will tell you, I still enjoy doing it, because if I was tired of it, I wouldn't do it anymore.
So you got this. You used to have musicians come to your studio, come to your house, and then you would record it. Who was the first one that came to your house to do this, and how did you convince them to do it?
Well, my wife used to have a studio where she would teach screenwriting classes. Okay. And during the pandemic, we had to give the studio up. So I haven't yet had anyone come to the house.
Okay. But so this was an actual like business that they would come to.
Yeah, they came to. It was in Studio City, which is centrally located here in Southern California, and so they would come to. Yeah, and there's tables and everything. So, yeah, it looked professional. So they weren't like walking in there thinking, what's going on here? I have no doubt, though, that I'll have people at my house once we are through the tunnel of the pandemic. Yeah. But the first guest that we had, I think it was either Michael DeBar, or it was I think it was Michael DeBar. Okay. He was the first one. Yeah. And he showed up and didn't think anything of it. I mean, and look, podcasts weren't like a known thing really 11 years ago. Not that much at all. So yeah. It was either Michael DeBar or Kim Shattuck of the Muffs. Okay. Rock and Peace, Kim Shattuck. But it was one of those two. And then the first, nothing against those people, but the first major guest we had was definitely Melissa Etheridge.
Yeah, that's a great get. Now, what made you decide to actually bring in an artist to start, talking to them in person, rather than just talking amongst yourselves?
It might have been Gary said we should have a musical guest. I'm like, no one's going to come in here and do this. He's like, maybe. So we just, we reached out to, I think he knew Kim Shattuck, and I think Michael DeBar might have tweeted like something. And so that made me think, well, maybe I should ask him. And then when those went well, we were like, all right, well, maybe we'll do this once in a while, but it certainly wasn't weekly. Yeah. It wasn't even really monthly. It would just be like, I would try to get people, and if I could get them, I would get them. But Melissa Etheridge really opened the door to get other guests, because when people would ask me in email, they would say, who else has been on the show? Now, even though we had only had like 3 guests, maybe at that point, I would say, well, our most recent guest was Melissa Etheridge. Semantics, a little bit of trickery. Yeah. And then every guest helps you get the next guest. So through the pandemic, I've amassed such an amazing list that it's still not easy, but it's really helpful when they go down the list.
Yeah, it's you've had some tremendous guests. You've had Brian Johnson from AC/DC. You've had Rob Halford. I mean, just so many of my heroes have been on your show. You talked to Andy Summers recently.
Klaus from Scorpions.
Klaus Meine, yeah, another one. I mean, that was an interesting thing. Where was he when you talked to him? I don't remember. Was he in Germany when you talked to him?
He was in Germany. Mike Tramp was in Denmark. So I always tell everyone with Zoom, I go, I'll work around your schedule, whatever time works for you. I don't, if it's 6 a.m. my time, so be it.
Yeah, you get up early though, right?
I do get up early.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast, and I see tweets from you in the morning, and I'm like, what's he doing up?
Well, like tomorrow's Thursday, and that's when the new episode drops. So I got to get up and I need to post about it. And if I have a guest, I need to send their PR person the links and the artwork and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I treat it like a job in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to let anyone down. I never want anyone to think this was a waste of their time or that I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain.
You're a professional.
I try to be professional with this.
Yeah. Was Melissa the first artist that you thought I can't get that person, and then you got them, or was there someone else that you were like, they're never going to say yes, but then they said yes?
I think I just went after Melissa and I got her. So it was kind of dumb luck. And then I still remember right after I recorded that episode, me and Gary, and I was in my car on the way home, and I was just like, I was so elated. Like I'd never felt like this after the podcast, because I was giddy and she was so lovely. I mean, it was like, it was real. And I'm like, it was one of those things where you're like, I can't believe that just happened. Did that just happen? I guess it did.
Yeah.
So
yeah, doing this show, I've had people say, how did you get so-and-so? How did you get Gilmore from Triumph to be on your show? And I'm like, I asked.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what it comes down to is there's two things they can say. They can say yes, or they can say no, or they can ignore you. So, which is a no.
Yeah.
So, you don't have to be afraid. You're just trying to do a show, and if they say no, they say no. But you're really good at not taking no for an answer, at least until they tell you to stop emailing.
There's an episode coming up in a couple weeks. It's a Meatloaf episode where we cover Bat Out of Hell 1, 2, and 3. Me and Mike Schmidt.
Oh, that ought to be
one
great.
Point, it's 4 hours long. I'll tell you that. But at one point in the show, we read an email chain back and forth between me and Yola's people. I just wanted to do that. I'm reading my part and Mike's reading the PR people, just so people can see that I don't really take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's I think it'll be I don't want to say eye-opening, that sounds crazy, but I thought it was interesting, because he was like, at this point, dude, a normal person would have that's it, it's over.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but I mean, but is it over? It's really not over.
Yeah.
But as you know, with getting Gilmore, he's in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
With Zoom, it's opened us up to, first
really
of all,
has.
Who says no to doing Zoom from their house?
Yeah.
For one thing, most people will do it. And then, when I would have people in studio, I could only pull from people that lived in the Southern California area. Now that's a big base of musicians for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But Brian Johnson was in Florida. And as we said, Klaus was in Germany, and Rob Halford, I think, was in Arizona. So I wouldn't have had a chance to get those if I didn't do the Zoom interviews.
Yeah. Have you gotten a little more comfortable doing that? I know you didn't care for it at first, or it didn't seem like you did at first.
It was weird at first. I think Dennis DeYoung was my first. And
what a way to start.
I know, right? And he was so great. And then he came back on literally a year to the day later. And by then I had figured out how to do it, and so had he.
Yeah.
So but it didn't feel like I was as connected. Now I do feel totally connected.
Yeah. Dennis is great. Dennis was the first guy that I said, why shouldn't I ask for him? Like I got a press release from the PR firm, and it said, here's a new release. And I'm like, well, for press inquiries, call this number. I'm like, why not ask for him?
Right.
and it worked out, and then that just kind of set the table for everybody that came afterwards. And then
Yeah, I
plus
mean, yeah,
you can then also say, hey, I mean, Dennis DeYoung did my show. Why wouldn't you do my show? Kind of
exactly.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. I've been trying for Tommy Shaw for a while, and it's again that isn't over yet. But when the new album just came out, I reached out for Tommy, and they said, "How would Friday be?" And I said, "Perfect." So, I sent the link and everything, and I said, just to reconfirm for Tommy for tomorrow. And they said, "Oh, this isn't for Tommy. This is for Lawrence." And I said, "No." I said, "No."
They baited switched you there.
Yeah, I said, "I'm sorry, I can't talk about the history of Styx with Lawrence Gowan. He's on 3 or 4 albums. I can't do it. I like him.
Yeah.
Nothing against him, but I thought it was getting Tommy." So, and they were like, "Okay, sorry for the confusion or whatever." But yeah, I didn't, because I don't know. I mean, maybe some people would just say, if it was earlier on, I might have just said, "Okay, that's fine. We'll do Lawrence."
Mm-hmm.
But no.
Yeah. You've been doing it a while now. You know how this goes. You know what to do, and you know when you're being played.
Yeah, and I mean, Tommy's done other shows.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. Like if I see someone that I haven't been able to get, and then all of a sudden they're on other podcasts, and then I'll look up the other podcasts, and I'll be like, "Well, these shows are good, but I've been around longer. I have more episodes. I've had more guests." So then I'll go, "Hey, what's going on?"
Mm-hmm.
I can't get Richard Marx, and I don't understand why. I can't get any play on Richard Marx.
It's because he won't get off Twitter long enough.
He won't get off Twitter long enough. I tweet at him, and doesn't help.
Yeah. Is there still like a holy grail person out there that you want to get on the show that you haven't been able to get, or that maybe you came close to getting and just didn't work out or whatever?
I do have 2 holy grails, and I believe they'll happen sometime. It would be Chrissy Hind is my number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Springfield was my number 1 for the longest time, and I was able to get him.
Yep.
And Jackson Browne would probably be my number 2.
Yeah, and you were just on recently on Records Revisited doing Jackson Browne's show with my favorite Jackson Browne album, Holdout.
Good. I'm glad to hear that that's your favorite also. And again, I tell people this, that doesn't mean it's the best one, but it's my favorite.
Yeah. It was the first one I owned, and that's probably, there's an association there.
Yeah, me too. That's the same. I mean, I can tell you many albums that is the first one I owned, and it's my favorite. Queen, The Game, Billy Joel, Glass Houses, Holdout. I mean, it's the River, Bruce Springsteen, The River. I mean, these are just, there's something about the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to do is to have you on I know you're a big Cheap Trick guy.
That's my band. That's
my love Cheap Trick. And one of my first records that I just played to death was at Budokan. And I know that you're a big fan of that album as well. And we're going to talk about the original 10-track at Budokan. There it is.
There it is.
Beautiful. That looks fantastic.
Well, this shiny. It's from the box set that was released a couple years ago. It's got the this is pristine. It's 180 gram vinyl, but it feels heavier than that, to be honest. It's got the book in it, everything. And nice. It's got the orange label too. So yeah. Great.
Yeah,
this was probably one of the first albums that I owned. It wasn't my first album, but it was one of my first for sure.
Do you remember your first album? What was your first album that you owned?
I believe it was Eagles, Their Greatest Hits.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember very clearly getting my stereo for Christmas with 3 K-Tel records.
Yeah.
From my parents, and one of them was Goofy Greats.
Oh, I had that.
And then one, like, I think one was Hit Machine, and I forget what the name of the other one was, like Out of Sight, I think it was. And just went from there. And I think then it was like, okay, these are good songs, and I'm playing these, and they're fine. And then I discovered this band, Kiss.
Yeah.
And everybody in the Midwest was listening to Kiss Alive, and my friend had it, and then I had to have it, and it just kind of went from there. And then when I heard Cheap Trick singing about getting their Kiss records out,
it's kind of cool.
that was very cool.
It's kind of cool. It's like, oh, those guys, they get me. They know. I remember I didn't have Kiss Alive for the longest time. My first two Kiss albums were Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun, because I got them from the Columbia Record and Tape Club. And I think those were the two that were available. And so I checked the boxes on both of those for sure. Yeah. Now, when you talk about your first stereo, was it like an all-in-one deal, or was it components? Okay.
It was a Sears stereo it had a little stand, and had one speaker on each side, and then the thing on the top, and it had the AM/FM radio. It had an 8-track player.
Wow.
And the turntable, and then underneath it was like the record storage place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I got one a few years later that was just basically an upgrade of the same thing.
Yeah, and then when you finally got a component system, you thought you were a big shot.
Oh yeah, I'm now an audiophile.
Right.
Yeah,
Michael, how long have you been doing this show?
I just passed. This thing started out as a newsletter. So it started out as I lost my job during the pandemic.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I was out of work for 4 months, and I wasn't really getting a lot of traction in the job market. And I'm a writer, and I work in communications. So I started to just write stories, and I'm like, I could do album reviews, and I can do listicles, like rank Billy Joel's albums or whatever, and I'll just do that and see if I can maybe get some subscribers and things like that. And just a little bit into it, I got called back to work, so that was great. I didn't have time to do it quite as much anymore, but I figured I would still keep on. And I had all these interviews because I started talking to bands about, the 15th anniversary of this progressive rock band's album, or whatever. And then I had all these videos, I did the Zoom call, I recorded them, I put them on the YouTube. I was like, well, I can't use all the quotes, so I'll just put up the video and people can see the whole thing.
Gotcha.
And then in June of last year, I had been doing the newsletter for about 6 months and putting up the videos. I went, why not just make this into a podcast? I just take the audio and throw in some music and, bumper at the beginning and end, and boom, it's a podcast. And so
there it is.
Podcast has been going for 6 months.
And are you a single guy? Are you married with kids?
Married with kids.
And so you're in your man cave right now, your office.
My man cave, yep.
And what did the family think when because my kids have known me doing this almost their whole, they're 21 and 17, but at 10 and 6, they just have known this all the time. Yeah. What did everyone think in the house when you said you're going to do a podcast?
Well, I've done other podcasts for some of the sports work that I do.
Okay.
I do some things on the side, cover college football. I cover some soccer. And so podcasts have been something I've been doing for years. And I think about 10 years was when I first started doing sports podcasts. And so that wasn't a big surprise. And my daughter, she just turned 13. She loves anything having to do with, the internet. So if you're on YouTube, you're a rock star to her.
You're a rock star. Yeah.
So she thought it was pretty cool.
I started interviewing you, but I do want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
When you interviewed Gilmore, did they set you up were you able to see the documentary before you interviewed?
Yes. In fact, that was what I did. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I was, I saw that they've been inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall or the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that they had the documentary coming out, and I said I'd love to have somebody from the band on the show talk about the documentary and the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame. And I think it was also there was something else I wanted to talk about that was kind of happening at the time. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but I had all these things. So it's like, okay, I have specific things that they want to promote. I'd like to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
knowing that once I get them talking, I can ask them whatever, you know.
Right.
And I didn't know who they would give me. In fact, I just went through their website. I just said, I found the contact information, said I'd like to talk to them. I have this show, and here's some of the guests I've had. Just, you know, like you said, let your guests get you the next guest.
Right.
And they got back to me, and we set it up. And unfortunately, Gil was a no-show the first time. He got caught.
That happens.
Yeah,
that happens too.
And he was like the one I was like really excited about, and then there was, you know, there's that letdown because he didn't show. But he was very gracious. He did the whole interview in his car. Because he doesn't
was
hear
he
so
driving?
well. No, he just doesn't hear well. So he does these Zoom things he takes his tablet in the car.
Okay.
And because this car stereo, he can hear it better.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it was great, but they set me up with a link to see the documentary, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I you know, one of the things I do, because I always want to get free tickets for shows. I always want to get, if I want to hear an album in advance, if I get a press release, I say, can you service me a download so we can talk about the album on the show? Boom, that always comes through. Hey, I see this documentary's coming out. Do you have a link that I can watch this? Boom, that happens. So yeah, because those are the rewards of doing this.
Yeah.
So lean into that, Michael.
Oh, I do. And you don't, it's, you know, nobody's getting rich doing the podcasts, or at least not a whole lot of people. So it's nice to have one little perk that you can kind of point to. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, as you know, and you know, you have a good time with your co-hosts when you have them on, even if you're just doing a track by track for Guns N' Roses or whatever. It really comes across that you have fun together and that you like the music.
Yeah, I mean, I never have to twist anyone's arm to get over here to record. You know, my friends always enjoy doing it, so yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about Cheap Trick at Budokan.
All right.
What's your Cheap Trick origin story? How did you become aware of them as a band?
Cheap Trick at Budokan. I heard I Want You to Want Me live version on the radio. Mm-hmm. I'd never really heard a live song as a single on the radio. And just that, I want you to want me. I mean, they introduced the song for you.
Yeah, they do.
I'm going to say that with this album, the stage pattern is just as iconic as the songs.
Yeah.
So I was like, I've never heard anything like this before. I didn't know what power pop was. I didn't know. I just knew what I'd been hearing on the radio, and I had never heard this. So then, and the name Cheap Trick, that's cool. What does that mean? I don't even know. And then you go and you buy the album, and there's these good-looking guys on the cover, and you flip it over, and you're like, who are these idiots? Who's this guy, this goofy guy, and this accountant? What's going on? Whose
dad is on the back of this album?
So I'm just looking at this like, well, there's something here for everybody. And then you take this thing home and you open it up. It's a gatefold, and it's got like a 12-page booklet, and there's stuff written in Japanese. What's going on here? I'm confused. What? And then from start to finish, there is just pure excitement in the grooves of this record.
Yeah.
For me, it's the best live album. Now, you can tell me UFO, Strangers in the Night. Sure, that's good. You can tell me many live albums that are great. Frampton Comes Alive, Kiss Alive. But there's something about this 10-track, 1-disc vinyl collection that it's just the sweet spot for me. When I listened to it, the vinyl today, and it just took me right back to 1979 when I purchased it.
Yeah.
It's just, and the album moves. It's just exciting.
Yeah.
And it feels like, you feel like you're there. You know, there's crowd noise, and you feel, you know, and you don't feel like anything's been overdubbed in the studio, because it's just live. It's just live. I love it.
Yeah. And that you can tell that this is a band that has it. I had heard, like you, I had heard this, I Want You to Want Me was the first thing I'd heard from Cheap Trick, the live version. And you can tell that this is a band that is so energetic and is feeding off of these screams and all this
Yeah.
cheering to the point where when you finally get around and you hear the studio version of I Want You to Want Me, you're like, is this the same band?
Right. And even though I like that version, it's cool. It's just, you're like, how did they get from that studio version to this? But then we know that the live version is really what the original version was supposed to be like, that we didn't get to hear until bonus tracks and all that stuff came out. Also, this kicks off with a song called Hello There.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know that that was a studio song. I just thought this band wrote a song to just for the concert, and Goodnight Now. They wrote these two things to bookend the concert. Then this album has an encore on the album, because track 9 is Goodnight Now.
Yeah.
And then boom, clock strikes 10. It's just, I mean, this next one is the first song on our new album. And then
it just came out this week.
And the song is called Surrender. I mean, this is a brand new one. Starts with Mr. Bunny Carlos. I mean, then there's a cover, Ain't That a Shame, that they make this cover their own. And there's a drum solo. It starts out with Bunny just jamming on the drums. And that's just, I love doing that on the steering wheel when I have this album in the car.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 dagga, boom, boom, boom.
It's amazing.
The album, it has everything you want, and you get in and you get out. It doesn't leave you, it doesn't really leave you wanting more. It leaves you satisfied.
Yeah. 10 songs, 42 minutes.
Yep.
Things sold 3 million plus copies, triple platinum, recorded in April of 78 at the Budokan Tokyo, but the audio was allegedly from Osaka that was used on the album.
Okay.
It was a smaller venue, and I guess the sound was better.
Sound was better.
Yeah. It was the 4th album in the Cheap Trick discography. It came out after the self-titled album In Color and Heaven Tonight, but just after Heaven Tonight, obviously.
And it wasn't supposed to be released here. It was a Japanese only thing that I don't know how it made its way across the pond to where the record company said, oh, we need to release this here too. I mean, Dream Police was ready to drop, and they had to push Dream Police a little bit to drop this in. And it's good that they did.
Mm-hmm. And I believe Need Your Love debuted on this album.
Right.
And then before it was on a studio album.
Yep. And then, and since I was unfamiliar with their studio catalog, this is all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that Lookout is only on this album. I mean, there's a studio version now that was released on the subsequent, CD bonus tracks, etc. But yeah, it's, I don't know what to tell you. It's just fantastic.
So 2003, Rolling Stone came out with their 500 greatest albums of all time, and this one was placed 426th, which I think is too low. But then subsequent Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time have knocked this out of their top 500.
So there's probably not even a Cheap Trick album on that.
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
Sad, but it is what it is. This album, though, was selected by the Library of Congress for inclusion in the U.S. Recording Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Nice.
I think we can agree it's aesthetically significant.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the historically or culturally, but hey, I'll take it. Cheap Trick came out with Budokan 2 in 1994. It had some leftover tracks from this and some others, 1979 Japanese appearances.
Yep.
They released at Budokan the complete concert 2-disc set in 98 on the album's 20th anniversary, and that expanded the album to 19 songs from the original 10. And I find that, for me, I don't know if it's this way for you, but I really prefer the 10-track version, and I can't. It's not that I don't like the songs on the 19-track version. It's not that they're not good. It's that I'm just kind of it just kind of throws me off, and especially with not even just the inclusion of the new songs, it's the order of some of the songs is different on the bigger one.
Right. And I agree with you. It's great to have the 2-disc 19-track version as a historical document, but it never has taken the place of the single disc version and whatever the sequencing is on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I even I went to a Cheap Trick. I think it was the night albums used to be released on a Tuesday. So I think it was Monday night they played at the Roxy out here, and they played the Budokan set list, the 2-disc version set list. Then after that, we walked down to Tower Records and we buy it, and they're signing stuff that night.
Wow.
So, and I'm gonna get out of my seat. I'm gonna go grab something.
Okay. Yeah, you got autographs. I know you're an autograph guy. So this is an album that peaked at number 4 on the Billboard 200 albums chart, went number 1 in Canada, number 2 in Holland, number 10 in New Zealand, number 26 in Sweden, and number 29 in the UK.
So
all right.
This I had signed that night. I'm going to turn this O light off.
Wow.
This I had signed that night. These were panels that were on the wall as promotional things, and I took them off the wall, and then they all signed it with a gold marker, gold paint pen, and then I had it framed in this gold frame. And this is one of my favorite things. I also have one of Rick's picks that is under the glass.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah. So this is one of my favorites.
How many things do you have signed by Cheap Trick?
Oh, by Cheap Trick. I think at one time I had almost every studio album signed. I have everyone's autograph except Pete Comita. I have John Brandt's autograph. I have Dax's autograph. I've like my wife will say, "Why are you going to get Cheap Trick's autograph again?" I'm like, I don't know, because I can, I guess, because it's fun.
Yeah.
But I do have their autograph more than anyone else.
Yeah. How many times have you seen them?
40 plus.
Wow.
But wow. I haven't seen them in a while now, you know. So I hopefully be able to go again.
That's amazing. I've only seen them a couple of times, and they were the opening act both times. I think both times for REO Speedwagon, in fact. But every bit as good as a headliner. I mean, you don't want this band to open for you.
Well, not when I moved out here in 95, and from 95 through like 2000, 2001, they would play in LA like 4 times a year. And as the headliner, and they would play at all these places like the Roxy or the House of Blues or the Canyon Club, all these super small venues. Mm-hmm. And if they had a new album out, they would lean heavy on the new album. You know, they'd play 5 or 6 songs, and it was easy to meet them after the show. And so now whenever they go out, they're always on a package tour. So you get a set list that's going to appeal to the masses. So you don't really get any deep cuts or anything like we used to. But
how much harder is it now to get an autograph after a show than it was 20, 25 years ago?
Well, I think it's easier now.
Really?
I never even tried. I never started to get autographs until I moved out here. Mm-hmm. Like people said, "Oh, how did you get Pete Townshend's autograph?" I said, "Oh, I waited 30 years and 90 minutes." Because I wouldn't have even thought that you could do it. Like when I was in high school and college, that would have seemed impossible. But I think it's really easy. Maybe, I mean, I just tell people, go to where the buses are, find the artist entrance, find the town car that has the sticker on the back. So you're like, oh, that's one of the cars that they're going to be driving in. Yeah. I find it to be easy.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, I know. I just know that, security now is a lot different than it was 25 years ago. You go around the back of any building. You could even walk into a lot of them probably.
Well, I don't listen to the security because it's usually just their handlers.
Yeah.
I got Meatloaf's autograph one night, and his handler's like, Meatloaf's not signing anything tonight because he saw I had my albums.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay. And he's like, you can't stand here. I'm like, I think I can. It's, it's just on the sidewalk. And he goes, no, you have to go across the street. All right. He goes, and Meat's not signing. So, and sometimes we'll even say, Meat's already gone. I'm like, no, he's not. Yeah. How could he be? Well, so finally Meatloaf comes out and I just yell. I say, hey, Meat, can we get a couple of signatures? Come on over. And this guy is so angry because I've just pulled the carpet out from underneath him.
Yeah.
He's been doing everything he could do. And maybe most of the time people just go, okay, thanks. And they leave. I never leave. I just never leave.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you took his power away from him.
I took his power. Same with Ted Nugent one night. This guy, and I'm not tall, but this guy was shorter than me by like a couple inches. And he was like throwing around that short man complex. And he's like, Ted's not, same thing. No. Same thing. Ted, can we get some signatures? Come on over. Sign stuff, talk to us.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to be a problem.
No, it's not. I tell you, I have a little bit of empathy for them. Having worked in pro sports, I've had to take players through crowded areas before, and you're just trying to, like, I got to get him to point B, and he will sign anything, and I have to try to do what I can to sort of speed up the process. Right. So yeah, I get it.
One night we saw Cheap Trick. It wasn't New Year's Eve. It was the day before New Year's Eve. And they were going to play the venue both nights, the 30th and the 31st. Mm-hmm. So it was the 30th and tons of people waiting out back after the show. And they came out and they very nicely said, look, it's the holidays. We all have our families here. So if it's okay, we're not going to sign stuff tonight. And then Bunny said, well, I'll stick around and sign stuff. They go, okay, Bunny's going to sign stuff. But if it's fine with everyone, we want to go spend the time with our families. And everyone was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And then Bunny stayed and signed everything.
Nice.
They made it a point to just tell us what was going on. I thought that was kind of cool because, if you just rush to your car and ignore everyone, then everyone's like, oh, what a dick. So,
yeah. What do you think it is about this band that they were never able to really capture on a studio album what they were able to do live? Do you think it was just the producer? What do you think created that difference?
I don't know. I think this again, I think the live album was an oddity to get airplay on the radio with I Want You to Want Me, a live single. I just think it was they have albums that people like and that have gone platinum, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. I for me, the first 6 or 7 albums are all solid.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then when they had the comeback in 88 with The Flame, that was unheard of. A number 1 single after we haven't done anything for like 6 or 7 years, no chart success.
Yeah.
But I just, they just keep doing it. They're like, they just keep on like that Energizer Bunny. They keep going.
It's an auto buy for you. They say we're coming out with a new album. You're already like, where do I order it?
I have been a day of release Cheap Trick album purchaser since Dream Police.
Wow.
Because that was the first one that came out after Budokan. So that said, the 3 most recent albums I do not care for.
Yeah.
Just not, I don't like them.
All right. Robin Zander, lead vocals, rhythm guitar. Rick Nielsen, lead guitar, backing vocals. Tom Peterson, bass and backing vocals. And Bunny Carlos on drums on this album. Do you have a favorite member?
Tom. And I've been trying to get Tom on the show, and he's still not 100% yet from the surgery, from the heart surgery.
Mm.
But I do believe that will happen. I'm not interested in talking to Rick because I just find him to be a bad interview. I don't think he gives a straight answer. I like Robin. I've tried for Bunny, and he said when COVID's over. So I'm like, well, we're going to do it over Zoom. We're not going to do it in person. You're in Illinois. And he just said, yeah, not right now. And Tom's the guy that, he's the coolest for me. He's cool. Yeah. He plays that 12-string bass. No one else plays that.
Mm-hmm.
He just looks cool.
So Rick wrote most of the songs on this album. There's a few that are co-written. And of course the cover, Ain't That a Shame, the Fats Domino cover. But like you said, they come out of the gate with All Right, Tokyo.
Yep.
And the introduction of the band, Hello There, jump into Come On, Come On, Look Out, as you mentioned. And then for me, probably the highlight of the first side is Big Eyes.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite on the first side?
Boy, that's so I mean, just that 3 in the center, come on, look out into Big Eyes, is just all killer. And then Need Your Love, it's an epic ballad. Mm-hmm. But, and again, I had never heard anything like Need Your Love in my life up to that point. Just that slow, and then that, I mean, just.
Who writes amazing. A 9-minute ballad?
Yeah, it's there's nothing like it up until that point for me. But I mean, I can't, there's nothing on the album that I don't love.
Yeah. Was there one side that you played more than the other, or was it always 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2?
Yeah, I always played 1, 2, 1. Yeah, I don't favor any side. I mean, you know, side B's got I Want You to Want Me into Surrender. Yeah. And even though I don't really care about hearing I Want You to Want Me played by them live now, I'm still not tired of the version that's on this album. Mm-hmm. And Surrender, they can play that twice within their set now if they want. I love Surrender.
Yeah.
That song's got so much going on lyrically for me.
Yeah, it goes, you've got Ain't That a Shame, I Want You to Want Me, Surrender, and then they hit Goodnight Now, and you're like, oh, it's over already. You're saying goodnight after those 3 songs.
And then this guy makes his guitar sound like a cuckoo clock. Yeah. Or whatever you want to call it.
For Clock Strikes 10, yeah, the chimes.
Yeah, and you're right. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is fantastic.
Yeah. One of the highlights is, of course, you talk about Ain't That a Shame and the Bunny Carlos bit, but also the trading of the guitar licks at the end of that song.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing. Ain't That a Shame was the second single off the album. It was a live album with 2 singles. It went to number 35 on the Billboard Hot 100, and I Want You to Want Me was the first single. It went as far as number 7, and the songs that were left off on the original version were Hello Kitties, Speak Now or Forever Hold Your Peace, Downed, Can't Hold On, Oh Caroline, Auf Wiedersehen, High Roller, Southern Girls, California Man. And of course, as mentioned, some of the tracking order is different on the 19-song version. You've now had a chance to go back and listen to these other songs. If you could put one of these songs on the original, if somebody said you have to put one of these on, which one would you put?
I think I'd throw Southern Girls on there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the ones you named are like mid-tempo and a little evil. And this album is a fun live album. It's upbeat, other than, you know, Need Your Love brings us down. Like if you're listening on CD, that brings you down in the middle, and then you come right back up. So, but Southern Girls I love it. And I love all the songs you just named. But if
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the pace of the one disc going, I would put Southern Girls.
How many versions of Budokan do you own?
I have the LP. I have remastered Japanese single disc, remastered Japanese double disc that comes in a mini album sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
Probably just those three. But I mean, over the years, I'm big on the a new version. Oh, and I also have the box set with the DVD and the other night.
Yeah.
But I mean, over the years, if I'm a sucker for, it's remastered with bonus tracks. All right. But then I get rid of my old one. If I get the new version, I don't keep, like, I don't have those Cheap Trick, the old CDs that had the red writing on the white spine. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Another thing about the album is, the record label, because the intro says, "We welcome epic recording artist Cheap Trick." I mean, you even know the label that these guys are on. Like they're letting you know every single thing.
I don't even think, I can't remember the last time I heard that at a concert, but it used to be fairly common.
Yeah.
It's like Capitol Records artists, or whatever,
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore, do they?
No.
Crazy.
My biggest disappointment with Cheap Trick is that Tom hasn't sung a song since Dream Police on record. And I think that he should be singing one song every record. I mean, when Robin Zander's your singer, should you step up to the mic? No. But I think it would be cool if Tom, that would be one of the questions I would ask Tom. I'd say, how come you haven't sang a song since Dream Police on record? There's got to be one he could sing. Come on.
Yeah. I wonder that too. Sometimes there's bands that happens, that there's 3 or 4 guys who sing, and then as they go along, it's fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
Until it's just one, and you're like, what happened? You just not want to do it anymore?
And you put all the power in the singer's hand too.
Yeah.
That's why Bunny's not there anymore.
Yeah, I lost track of them for a while, and it was a surprise to me that Bunny wasn't with them anymore. And when I reconnected with them, and I never really went back and got that story. But it sounds like you've reached out to him to get him on the show. What, were you going to talk to him about? The whole thing.
No,
the Cheap Trick thing?
when there's bands that have a past that's not good with the other members, I always tell their PR people, no drama, just talking about the music.
Yeah.
I was very close to having Steve Perry over Christmas when his Christmas album came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, I'm not going to talk about that stuff. I'm only going to talk about the music.
Yeah.
And then they came back with, well, Steve doesn't want to talk about Journey at all. And I said, all right, I'll just talk about his solo albums, because I wanted to have him on.
Yeah.
And I knew that tangentially, is that the word, that I could bring Journey up without, going track by track on Infinity or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
So, but yeah, I always tell these people, because I know that a lot of times they don't want to be, they don't want some tabloid stuff coming in. They don't want to talk. So I let them know when there's artists like that. I let them know that's not what I'm not interested in that.
Right. And you're not, this isn't blabbermouth. You're not trying to get the quote that gets retweeted a million times. Yeah. I went through that too, because when I reached out to Dennis DeYoung's people, and they said, I said, I just want to talk about his career and the new album.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to bring up Tommy or those guys at all. And next thing I know, Dennis is just launching into.
Oh yeah, he brings it up. You don't have to. He brings it up. That's cool. Why not?
Yeah, and I'll talk about it if they want to talk about it, but I'm not going to be the guy who says, this guy that you don't get along with, what's up with that?
Right. And that's when I reach out to get Tommy, I always say, I'm not interested in talking about Dennis. I do want to talk about Tommy's songs in Styx, from Crystal Ball to the new album, but and I want to talk about Shaw Blades and Damn Yankees and that stuff. But yeah, I'm not gonna spring a Dennis question on Tom.
Yeah. So is Dennis ever going to be back in the band? Yeah, you don't want to bring that one up.
Yeah, I want to. We'll see what happens when they get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame sometime. Oh, and I did see Cheap Trick get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they blew the place apart. Even though I knew the songs they would sing, I knew it would be Dream Police, Surrender, I Want You to Want Me. I knew it would be those three.
Mm-hmm.
But they just there was a guy standing next to me, and he turned to his girlfriend. He goes, "Why is Cheap Trick closing the night?" And then when they were done, I said, "That's why." Because
you don't want to
follow that.
You don't want to follow Cheap Trick. I mean, there's nothing in it for you, but a loss of estimation by comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a great time seeing REO Speedwagon. They were fantastic, but they had to work at being fantastic because Cheap Trick was so good.
Well, I saw Cheap Trick open. This was not that long ago at the Greek Theater. Cheap Trick opened for I'll call them Fake Foreigner or Foreigner. As my friend Dave Festini calls them, Foreigner. And Cheap Trick opened for, now this is a band that's only got one original member, Mick Jones. And sometimes Mick doesn't even come out till song 6. But I can tell you, Cheap Trick could not have followed Fake Foreigner. They're good. I mean, if you're in the audience and you just know the songs and you don't know the makeup of the band, they sound like Foreigner.
Yeah.
And Kelly Hansen on lead vocal, he's an energetic frontman and he can sing great. So yeah, it made sense that Cheap Trick opened because they couldn't have followed that.
Yeah.
And Foreigner has more hits.
Yeah.
They have legit hits.
Yeah. They have the really big hits.
They have the really big hits. They have songs that people play at their weddings. I will tell you this about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I had press pass. I got to the venue super early, like no one was in the arena. And so I got down on the floor and I was able to walk amongst the tables where the bands that were getting inducted were sitting. And so Cheap Trick's table was right in the center. And there's name cards. Tom, Robin, Rick's wife, Dax. And I'm trying to find where Bunny's sitting. The whole way in the back. Like as far away from that table as you can buy. Like he was the back row of tables.
Wow.
I know. I was just like, wow. And he's going to get up there and they're going to play together.
But they can't sit together for an hour or two.
Yep. And then I was in the press room when they came in and the four of them are on this little stage taking questions. And someone asked Robin, "What's it like to be playing with your old drummer again?" And Robin just said, "He's not that old." Yeah. It was like, wow. You could feel it.
Yeah. Deflect a little bit, make a joke out of it kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's rough. But they're people too, and they have beefs just like anyone else.
Yep.
Just like
Michael, where does Cheap Trick rank among live? I mean, Budokan rank among live albums for you?
Top 3.
What are those 3?
It's got to be at the top 3. Kiss Alive was the first rock album by one band that I ever owned, so it's very special to me.
Right.
So those two, those might be 1 and 2. Yeah, those might be 1 and 2 right there. But there's, obviously, Frampton Comes Alive is huge. Who Live at Leeds is a good one.
Yep.
There's all kinds of, but those are probably 1 and 2, and cool. They could go either way on any given day. But probably Kiss Alive, just because it's got that one connection of being my first one. But
yeah,
for sure, Cheap Tricks at Budokan, my favorite album from the band, and I got Dream Police not too long after that. I think it was for my birthday or something. And so they're very, very close because I got them pretty close together.
Yeah.
So just, it was a long time actually before I went back and heard the rest of their catalog, the earlier catalog, and then, moving forward beyond Dream Police. But your very favorite band, you'd say?
Yeah. I mean, if someone asks what a favorite band is, I've seen them more than any other band.
Yeah.
I've met them many times. I have autographs, out the wazoo. So, yeah, it's just, I'm just disappointed with the new output, which is hard, but, cause you want your band to, keep you excited. And,
Sure.
I think Rick doesn't have songs in him anymore. So they're writing by committee. And, I just find that lyrically, some of the lyrics are dumb and immature. And the production, they've been using a guy, Julian Raymond. And I believe now he's just a yes man. Like, I don't think he's pushing the band.
Yeah. So he's not giving them, let's try it this way.
No, I don't.
He's just going along with what they do the first time.
Yeah. I mean, let Dave Grohl produce a Cheap Trick album. Someone that might push them.
Yeah. Maybe they can write with Jim Peterick or something.
Yeah. Yeah. He worked well with Dennis.
Yeah, he did. He really did. And it's the funny thing is, I've come across about, I think, 4 artists that have worked with Jim Peterick, and they don't sound like Jim Peterick. They sound like themselves. They're not doing Survivor songs.
Right.
They're doing their songs that sound like them, but he has helped them find their voice.
Well, from what I heard, he has produced a new Chicago album.
Really?
Yeah. And if that's true, I'm very interested in hearing that.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be exciting.
It's like when Jeff Lynne produces you, it all starts to sound a little like Jeff Lynne, even though I love Jeff Lynne.
Yeah. Yeah. Cloud Nine would sound a lot like the Tom Petty albums and the Wilbury albums that he produced. Yeah.
Yep.
I get that.
I have
Pat, this is.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I want to.
Since you had Dennis on the show, I want to tell you a Dennis DeYoung story.
All right.
He played this really small outdoor theater out here. It's called is it the Ford Amphitheater, the John Ford Amphitheater? It holds about 1,000 people, and there's no security in front of the stage. It's like your front row, and then the stage. There's like not a barrier.
Right.
They have security there.
Yeah.
Not a barrier. So, my friend and I go to see him, and I take 2 albums. I take Grand Illusion because he's playing Grand Illusion that night. And then I take Desert Moon, Dennis solo album, because I always find that if you take a solo album with you, with the band album, it kind of ingratiates you. Like they know you're a fan. Yeah. In my head, that's how I think it works. So I'm about 15 rows back, and my friend has never been with me when I'm in action to get an autograph. So he says to me, "How are you going to get those signed?" I go, "Oh, well, I looked at the set list. I know what the last song is. And right when they start playing the last song, I'm going to walk right up to that stage, and with my Sharpie uncapped and my album, and I'm just going to hold them up." And my friend said, "You think that's going to work?" And I go, "Yeah, I think it's going to work." So that last song starts to play. I put I forget which one. No, I put Grand Illusion on the front, and I walk up to the stage, and I don't stick it up immediately because I don't want to block anyone's view. But as they're wrapping it up, I hold the album up, and I hear a guy behind me, and he says, "There's no way, dude. There's no way he's signing that out." I don't even turn around because I don't want to lose focus.
Right.
So Dennis is coming, down the stage and, shaking hands and slapping 5 and stuff. And he sees me and he says, motions me.
Yeah.
I hand him the album in the Sharpie, signs it, and then he feels that there's another album behind it. And it's Desert Moon. And he looks at it and he looks at me and he gave me that. Yep.
Yeah.
And he signed that one too. And he hands them back to me. And as I turn around to walk back to row 15, everyone is like staring at me and they're like, and I'm getting some of these and
Yeah.
that was awesome. And I get back to my friend. He's like, I don't know how that even worked. I go, I know, but it did. And yeah, that's part of it for me. The story that you have after getting the autograph is, I keep toying with the idea of writing a book, and each chapter would just be about one of the albums I got signed, because the story isn't just the 2 seconds it takes. Like the stories, there's a lot of story leading up and a lot of story after it's signed too.
Right.
So
the battling with the PR guy and the handlers and the 90-minute wait where your friend waited with you for 45 of it and said, I'm out of here. I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh my God. That real quick, my friend Pete Schwab, his favorite artist is Bruce Springsteen. So we go to see Bruce Springsteen at the LA Sports Arena. And after the concert, it was on the Magic Tour, so not that many years ago. As we're walking back to the car, I go, he starts to go straight and I'm going this way. And I go, Pete, where are you going? He's like, I'm going home. I go, you're not gonna stay and wait? He goes, you're not gonna get Bruce Springsteen's autograph. And I was like, but don't you even want to wait and see? He's like, no, there's no way that's happening. Well, it did happen. And then the next day I post the pictures on Facebook and he calls me and he goes, you got Bruce Springsteen's autograph? I go, yes. He goes, how did you do that? I go, I just waited 90 minutes. That's all it took.
30 years and 90 minutes.
30 years and 90 minutes. That would be the name of the book, I guess.
Yeah. I think you should do it. And I have heard you tell that story before, but I don't have the clip about, your Pat's going to tell the story again. Yeah, I don't have your audio cue there.
I do tell stories over, but that's because I always feel like, for me, I always feel like there's new listeners that haven't gone back and listened to 600 episodes. So it's new to them.
Plus, when you're old like me, you forget those stories and then you hear them again. It's like hearing them for the first time.
Exactly. I do try to tell them exactly the same way so that people aren't like, wait a minute, he's embellishing now.
Yeah. So what do you have coming up? This is going to probably go live on the 13th of January. So what can we expect from the Rock Solid podcast?
I would say the week. Do you drop your episodes on Thursday also?
Yeah.
Next week, I have a fantastic interview with an artist named Caroline Jones. She's an up and coming country artist, even though she has 6 albums. Mm-hmm. Her new album's called Antipodes. And I had a fantastic conversation with her that I just recorded 2 days ago. And I really think people are going to dig her music. And I really think they're going to like this interview because I certainly did.
Yeah. Pat, where can people find you on the internet?
At Twitter, you can go to @RockSolidShow because podcast was too many letters.
Yep.
So @RockSolidShow, and you can go to rocksolidpodcast.com for everything about the show. T-shirts, episodes, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And you can find Rock Solid on all of the major platforms, all of the podcast apps. Yes. It's a great show. I enjoy it. I'm glad that Alexi was on because that enabled me to find you. And I have a great time, whether you've got a guest on or whether you and Mike Schmidt are just going track by track or you got Siegel on or whoever. I actually really like when you have Schmidt on because the two of you have an extremely great chemistry together.
Well, I will tell you this, the day this drops for you, this one, that's the day. Listen to this one first and then go listen to Rock Solid 4-hour. I think I'm calling it Bat Fest, Bat Out of Hell 1, 2, and 3. You will not be disappointed. There's many tangents. We recorded it on a night when I think I think the family was gone for some reason. Like I think Pilar was on a trip, and I was the only one in the house. And that's when Mike comes over, and that's when we just go for as long as we want because we got nothing else to do. So it's a really, really fun episode. And I agree with you, Mike. I've known Mike for 30 years. So it's just, we just know everyone, each other's give and take and all that kind of stuff, and make each other laugh.
Yeah. So, that's important, especially if you're doing a comedy podcast.
Yes. If you're going to call it a comedy podcast, you better laugh.
Deliver.
I always tell people it's weird because when you podcast, especially if I'm doing it with Schmitty, so we want to be entertaining. So the only gauge you really have is if we're laughing in the room, then I assume that'll go through the mics and the wires and into your ears, and you'll laugh too.
Yeah, and I think it probably happens more often than not. So
right.
I'm looking forward to the Meatloaf thing. I love when you pull out his more recent efforts in the middle of a show to illustrate. Oh. Is it this bad? And then you play that. Yeah, it's not usually that bad, but I'm looking forward to it. Pat Francis of the Rock Solid podcast. I've had a great time talking to you, and best of luck getting all the guests you want to get, and go check out Pat's show if you haven't. But chances are you've probably heard his show more than you've heard mine. So thanks for being on the show.
You're welcome, and everybody keep listening to Michael's show, and Michael, keep doing what you're doing. Keep having fun.